You have to truly believe in the magic.
Hey, Magic fans, and welcome to Penny for Your Thoughts, the podcast of the Orlando Magic UK. Today, we're going to be getting into talking about Paolo and asking if the playoffs for this season are now a pipe dream. Gary, how you doing, my friend?
Always good in the North, Paul. How are you?
Very, very well, my friend. Been a busy week, been working. I know I don't do it too often, but yeah, it's been a busy week working. G, how's your week been, mate?
Busy like you, Paul, with work. Just glad it's the weekend. We got some Magic basketball tonight. So, yeah, roll on the weekend and a few beers, mate.
Absolutely. Mikey Clark, how's you, mate?
I'm good. Like you boys, work's been busy. Been back into the gym this week, getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock and getting my sessions in. You can call me Dom this week because the Doms are real, if you know what that means.
Yeah.
Gee,
No.
Paul, like, what?
No.
What are you on about?
Can I just say, it wouldn't getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym. I don't think it's the Doms are real. It's clearly the Dums. That is just beyond ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Well, Mikey's seen as the Mandalorians back on Disney. I'm just going to say this is the way. Well done.
This is the way. Have you boys watched episode 1 yet?
Not yet,
mate.
Oh, you got to catch up. Becky was like, we're not doing anything else on Wednesday night except The Mandalorian at 7:30 when Lily's gone to bed. But yeah, you got to tune in. It's definitely a good watch.
It will be watched, but at the moment, Mrs. B is dominating the Disney Plus feed, trying to finish off catching up on Grey's Anatomy.
Amy's watching that as well.
Mate,
What is it about
18 series or something like that? I think we're on series 14 now.
Oh, she's on series 2. I got a long way to go.
Oh, mate. Oh, you have
strap yourself in, G.
Yeah.
yeah. You're going to get to listen to a lot of podcasts while she sat pretending to be involved in watching Grey's Anatomy, mate.
Yeah. Send it upstairs.
Just one AirPod in.
Yeah.
So, oh yes, darling. Yes, I'm listening to it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
as you're listening to the 6-man show or something.
Yeah.
This is not the way.
Alternatively, G, just switch it off and say no.
Yeah.
There's another option for you.
Now we know who's the boss of G's household, and it's not G. That's for sure.
I was going to say we know who the single man is amongst the three of us. Who?
This is the way. This is
the way. Gary, I've got to just say, nice shirt, by the way. It's now arrived and all framed. The Admiral shirt.
Oh yeah. I was really happy with that because I had an idea of what it was going to look like. I've been waiting to do it for ages, and then I took it down and just kind of mapped out. This is exactly what I want, and went out and collected it. And it was just exactly as I wanted it to be. So yeah, it's going to be hanging on my landing upstairs.
Very nice, mate. It's absolute quality. Yeah, really good thing. That was a good investment, mate. I very much like it.
Salute the Admiral.
Maybe you need to put Admiral's tweet that he replied back to you with, and frame that and put that in there as well.
I'm running out of money, Mikey. I kind of just keep framing everything. I'll get another one. I'll get another frame, stick it next to it. I'll just blue tack it on or something.
No, don't do that.
Oh mate, that's brilliant. But yeah, love the shirt with the pictures. It looks brilliant.
Yeah.
Mate. Really love that.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
So should we get into it then, guys? Let's
do it.
As we're recording, it's Friday the 3rd of March, and this week it's been kind of a slow news week as far as the team goes. We've seen the return of Michael Carter-Williams to the club on a 2-year contract. I believe the second year is team option. So despite being on the bench so far, he's seen no minutes in any of the games. But Gary, what are your thoughts on us bringing him back into the fold?
I think it's a move that's maybe divided people. I think you've seen it a little bit in our group chat, and you can see it a bit on Magic Twitter as well. And For the record, when you look back at the previous stint of MCW, I really liked him actually as a player because I felt in our old team he was probably like our only real tough guy enforcer who you would see would give it out a little bit. And I think the nature of the team has changed a little bit since then. But I like the hustle. I like the defensive side. And I do think he's there because he's obviously impressed with his work ethic and his attitude. I think they wouldn't have brought him back if they didn't like that. So I think the veteran side of him, not playing many minutes, he's obviously doing things that they like. I think that's why he's there, because he was assumed before as being like a Steve Clifford guy, I think. But now I'm thinking, is that really the case, or is it really a Weltham guy instead? The cons of it all is that MCW can't shoot. And that's what more than anything we really need. And whereas I really I like him, I've already said it, but the thing that went through my mind after it happened was we didn't have Jalen Suggs and Gary Harris when we had MCW before. We do now. And we've got two very, very competent defenders there. And Markel's really stepped his defensive side up and Cole's worked on it. So it's kind of a different backcourt that he's stepping into. And I saw a tweet, and whoever it was who tweeted this, forgive me, but I can't remember your handle. But you could flip it and say, and I totally see this, we went into trade deadline and lost RJ Hampton, Terence Ross, Mo Bamba, and you could flip it and say the return of that was we got Michael Carter-Williams back after you've cut Pat Bev. So I can totally see that argument. For me, I don't mind. We needed somebody on the bench. We needed somebody who wasn't going to unsettle the locker room, and they know more than what we do. We don't see what happens behind the scenes. If he wasn't a positive presence, he wouldn't be there. But for anyone saying they're not on board with it, given how the team's made up now, and given that I doubt MCW is coming back as a good 3-point shooter, I can see that point as well, but I do like him. So, yeah, that's my...
I mean, for me, I'm not actually convinced he's been brought in to play that often. I think I put this in the group, that he seems to be there more as a veteran presence, a voice on the bench. I know that you're still in the process, Gary, of watching the Milwaukee game, and you can see in that game, MCW is there talking to Jalen. He's really giving him some instructions. And I think there's one point where David or Jeff mentioned, or it's Dante who mentioned, about how much he is getting into the timeouts and the animated presence that he is. So for me, it's kind of more, he's been brought in more for that role than necessarily playing. But I think he's there as the defensive presence in case we see somebody, be it Gary Harris or Jalen, go down and him need to step in and provide a few minutes. That'd be my view. I quite like the move. I quite like it. I've got no great issues. I don't think we've brought a veteran into play necessarily.
I was just quite impressed that I managed to call it last week when we were talking about the open roster spot. What's the chances?
Move on from that. No, G, you did mention it. You did say you did, mate.
Yeah. Gee, I've got to ask you, what's the lottery numbers for this week? Because if you could just text them through to me.
I know.
I'm really happy to see how mystic you are, and I'll give you a 10% cut if you're right.
I wish I knew the lottery numbers, mate. Because
I wish you knew the lottery numbers.
I know, mate.
Mystic Jones.
So, absolutely. Now, we've also seen Paolo Banchero named Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month for the third straight month. He joins Shaquille O'Neal as the only player in Magic history to be named NBA's Rookie of the Month in 3 consecutive months. Shaq did do the Fate 4 times, November 92 through to 93. So throwing in Is This Anything stat that on 20-point plus games that David brought out in was it the Bucks game, I think? Gee, how would you evaluate Paolo so far this season? Put my teeth in. I'm having a nightmare.
Well, let's be honest, guys. We've got ourselves a bona fide star there, haven't we? Obviously, we've seen a little bit of a dip in February in terms of his points per game. Obviously started off the season, 22 in October, 22 November, 19 December, 20 in January, and he's good for 19.7 for the season. And if you compare that to, and I shout out Welt God on Twitter because he came up with this one, Scotty Barnes, last year's Rookie of the Year, his overall figures were 15, 7.5, and 3.5, and Paolo's worst month, Paolo's better because he's doing 16.6, 7.5, 3.3. So that tells you how much of a jump we've got this year from last year's, Rookie of the Year. Look, you watch that Pelican game and that fourth quarter, it was just give it to Paolo, get out of the way, give it to Paolo, making jump shots, backing down, fade away, getting rebounds, being in the right place at the right time. You just felt like you had that go-to scorer, and we've touched upon this countless times on the podcast. But you really think that the front office has got the man from last year's draft absolutely spot on. His field goal percentage will go up. 42% isn't that bad for a rookie. 3-point field goal, obviously it's been bad. I know, Paul, you're going to touch upon this in a second. He didn't have the best February, but even with that, he's still shooting 27%. So he started off okay beginning part of the year. So, that's going to be worked upon in the summer, no doubt. He's getting to the line at quite a rate. He's making 75% of his free throws, getting to the line 7.5 times a game. So it's just really on the Magic to surround him now with the right players. And we'll touch upon the Bucks game in a little bit. Obviously, comparisons there a little bit to Giannis, but Giannis has got shooters. So it's on the front office now to get better shooters with 27th in the league on 3-point field goals made at 10.6. And then percentage-wise, we're at 34.6, which is 23rd in the league. So we need to get better shooters surrounding him, but we've got the building block in him, Wagner, Bolt, and a couple of others. So, superb rookie campaign. He couldn't really ask of more. We've really struck out.
You've mentioned there that I've put in the subjects for tonight about Paolo's 3-point shooting percentages that they're getting highlighted. In October, he made 29% from three. November was 25%. December was his best month with 33.8. January 32.8, and then February we've had a real dip down to 3.3%, where he made 1 of 33 efforts, which, according to Open Court, is the worst 3-point percentage in a month in NBA history, with at least 1 3 made. Are you concerned at the 3-point shooting, G? Personally,
no.
If you're scoring us 20 points nearly a game in other ways, I can sort of live with it a bit.
Yeah, and you've seen his stroke from the previous months. I play on a Tuesday night, and I'm not very good. But you have some nights where it's just not happening. But he's a proven professional that has done it in the previous months. His form looks good, and I'm sure the coaches will be working on him. To sort of right that wrong for February, and it'll come good. But once he has that as a weapon in his arsenal, you're looking at somebody who's going to be unstoppable in a couple of years.
For me, it's not as if yes, there's been some air balls. There's been some that you're looking for. Oh dear, but there's a lot have been hitting the rim. There's been a couple of shots that have defied gravity, rolled around, been right through, and come back out. That if they'd have dropped, perhaps it would. We've seen often enough players get one go through, and that's it. Off they go. Sport's a confidence game, and I say he's getting his 20 points a game roughly. In other ways, there's got to be some weakness in a rookie's game, surely to God.
Yeah,
Paolo's
somewhere to
be
develop.
fine.
Absolutely. I just think
it's
it's
going to
been
be absolutely fine.
I genuinely think it's been overblown. I do think it's been over publicised.
The other thing is
on Magic socials.
The other thing is he's hitting that rookie wall. He's obviously had a dip in efficiency over the last month or so, but he's already being treated like one of the star players. He's getting double teams. He's getting the opposing team's best defenders going up against him night in, night out. And he's just going through those struggles at the moment. And I think I'm more happy that he's still shooting them. I think if he stopped shooting them, that would be more of an issue. Keep shooting them. He's got all summer to work on that. And I'll tell you what, if he can get up to what his averages have been for December and January, even though that's below an NBA average, if he can get up to 33, 34% next season, then, mate, good luck.
It was during the Bucks game that that they were saying about. I think it was Jeff Turner had said that you don't associate Giannis with 3-point shooting, but he makes them from time to time. Doesn't have the best percentage, but you have to be aware that he can make them.
Oh, you live with that. You live with that, don't you? Yeah.
And if you get Paolo doing the same sort of thing as you've just said, Mikey, with a 30-odd%, you live with it. That's great. If you're getting the points elsewhere, but you do have some threat, I'm happy with that.
Out of interest, Paul, when you said there about the different months and then like the recent criticism. So if we say in March, Banchero puts in, say, 37% three, does the narrative then become that he's a pretty good 3-point percentage shooter and we should just look at it on that month?
And this is where I say I think it's been blown out of all proportion.
Yeah. It's a knee-jerk.
Yeah.
Now, that's a knee-jerk.
Well, it's based on 34 shots.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
This is what we're talking here about. When you look at his stats, and you mentioned rightly about the comparison to Scotty Barnes.
Yeah,
I could be wrong here, but Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month and such, because the Western Conference, really, you're looking at it and you're going, Walker Kessler and such is getting a lot of love at the minute. Keegan Murray be a player who you'd be looking at, but beyond Paolo, for me, the second best rookie in the league is Jaden Ivey. And Jaden Ivey in a really good month for Jaden Ivey is averaging less than Paolo in a bad month for Paolo Banchero, which, that kind of says it all when we're nitpicking a guy who isn't the 3-point shooters, 3-point percentages. And then he's better, as G was saying, about than the rookie of all the rookies from last season. And he's still clearing the best rookies in this class when you were saying, he's had a bad month. A bad month for Paolo Banchero is better than the rookie of the year and every other rookie this season.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's absolutely fair point. Now, as we're recording tonight, the Magic sit with a record of 26 wins and 37 losses, 13th in the Eastern Conference. Last season, we had a final record of 22 wins and 62 losses. So we're already 4 wins better in the column than we were at the end of last season with 19 games remaining. Now, the Magic are 4 games back of Washington, who are in 10th, and we've dropped back of Indiana, who were in 12th by 2 games because of their more recent wins. They've had a little bit of form. So the only team we are playing in the chase for the playing tournament is Washington. We play them twice. So, Mike, I'm just asking the question, with the schedule we have remaining and the lack of direct opportunities to affect the teams ahead of us, how do you evaluate the Magic's chances of making the playing tournament?
I think they can still make it. I think it's going to be harder than it was a few games ago. It's 4.5 games back now after Washington beat Toronto, which makes it a little bit more difficult. And I said this, I think it was on our first episode back when we got the podcast going again. And I said when we looked at the games against those teams in and around us, I thought we had to win at least 4 or 5 of those because they were 6-pointers. They were just as important, if not more important, than all the other games against the Bucks and some of these other teams we've got to play. And that Pacers loss, although you can't just put it down to one game, it did feel like one nail in the coffin. Yes, we bounced back 2 nights later and beat the Pelicans, but that the impact of beating the Pacers would have outweighed bouncing back against the Pelicans in the win-loss column and trying to catch those teams above us. Do I think they can still make it? Yes. I mean, it's still possible. They can still make it 4.5 games. But I am starting to feel it's getting to the point where it's going to be too much of an uphill climb at this point. I mean, we've still got to play the Washington Wizards twice. And I think when we played them the last time, they kicked our asses. I think we lost by 20 or 30 in that game. And we haven't really matched up well with them this year. And they're playing well at the moment. They've been winning a few games lately. So you're going to have to win both of those for me to even still have a chance to get into one of those last 2 spots. Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I had a quick look at Tankathon. We've got the 16th hardest remaining schedule. Washington have got the 15th remaining schedule. So that, I mean, you could say we've got as good a chance of them as picking up as many wins. Toronto have actually got the hardest remaining schedule out of every team.
Theirs is a real stinker. Theirs is really hard.
But Toronto have been here before. They know how to play well down the stretch. So, yeah, if I'm honest, I actually think it's starting to look like it might settle in with the Raptors and the Wizards being in those last 2 spots as it stands. But look, it only takes one player. It only takes Bradley Beal to go and get injured for Washington, or the Raptors going and Siakam misses some games, and then you might be able to catch one of these teams. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you take care of business, if you win your games, then you're going to be in with a shout. But it's getting to the point where we can't keep trading one win and one loss. We've got to start putting a bit of a winning streak together now down the stretch.
Yeah, definitely do need that run. Definitely do need that run now, because I've put it in today's game preview that for the past 10 games we've been in a sequence of win one, lose one.
Yeah,
that can't continue if we want to chase somebody down. As far as if I don't think as fans when you look overall for the season, if we went the rest of the season win one, lose one, would we be unhappy at 32 wins for the season,
No.
considering where we were last season? No, sorry, 36 wins for the season as opposed to 22 last season. That represents really good progress.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree, mate. I mean, at the end of the day, it's been a successful season. We know what we're moving ahead with now. So whether we get in or not is beyond. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just more experience for Paulo Franz, Markel, playing in more meaningful games. And look, I hope they do take it down to the last few games, because I think I read Greg Anthony put a tweet out a couple of days ago about saying playing games down the stretch of the season's almost like adding on another year onto some of these players in terms of their experience and what they can learn from this. But I mean, you go through the last, what was it, 18, 19 games we've got left?
19.
There's still plenty of winnable games. I mean, we've got Hornets tonight. I mean, if you don't win that, then you definitely ain't going in. We've already beat the Blazers. We've got the Bucks again. And if we compete like we did against the other night, and we'll get into that shortly, we can give them a run for their money. The Jazz is winnable. We've got the Heat twice. We've got the Spurs. The Clippers are 0-4 since Russell Westbrook signed for them. So we could keep that streak going. LeBron's injured at the moment. So you've got the Lakers coming up near the end of the month. You've got the Wizards twice, like I said. You've got the Nets again. The Pistons. So there are plenty of games there that the Magic can pick up some wins and get themselves back into this picture. But yeah, it's we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we need to get Jonathan Isaac back on the floor, because the record's been pretty good with him back. But that's a topic to talk about shortly.
Well, since we recorded last, the Magic's played 3 games. We lost 1-1 to 108 in the Amway to the Pacers. I mean, you've got to say, Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton were excellent in that game. They really did turn up and play. For us, Franz Wagner led the team with 21 points. Wendell had 11 rebounds, and Cole turned up with 5 assists. We then went on the road to New Orleans and I think put a really strong win together. Play 108-93. You've already touched on how good Paolo was in the fourth quarter for 29 points in total, 8 coming down the stretch. Markel had 5 assists, and Wendell again with his assists 11. Rebounding 11. And then the final game was to the Milwaukee Bucks, where 117-139 loss. Cole turned up. He really turned up in that game. He was superb. 28 points. Markel carrying on with 21, his scoring tear that he's been on recently. So I'm going to ask you, G, about the Bucks game, because it was the Magic. I felt the Magic played really hard. They fought hard throughout. But were you disappointed at the margin or manner of the defeat in Milwaukee?
Honestly, no. Just because that Milwaukee team is the best team we have seen all season by an absolute country mile. They're very well coached, set out. They're deep. They're also missing Chris Middleton and Wes Matthews from that team, so they've got those to come back. You've got people coming off the bench, and Jay Crowder, Bobby Portis, Myers Leonard, Joe Ingles have all been starters on very good teams. So as soon as the starting unit goes off, you get these,
nobodies.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Mikey, I was just about to say, am I hearing praise and love for Joe Ingles? Who
I don't like Joe Ingles. He's a convict.
Wherever he's been.
I'm not a fan of Joe Ingles. I'm not a fan of him. But and you're talking about nobody. He's that green guy who hit a bunch of threes on us. But anyway, I digress. But no, they've got literally about 4 or 5 players deep who've had starting roles on various other teams. They're very well coached. They've surrounded Giannis with shooting. So you build the wall and they just knock you down from the corners, shooting 46%. Did they shoot 46%? No, I've just got that wrong. But they made 26 3-point field goals. If the team shoots that against you, you're never going to win here. But in fairness, like you said, Paul, I thought we competed admirably. We were in with a shout. Half-time, the third quarter, it started to get away from us. We did out-rebound them. Shot 40%. We shot 46%. There we go. And we only had 13 turnovers in Milwaukee. So, putting up 117, the offense was there. But obviously the defense wasn't, there to stop that Milwaukee
but let's
onslaught.
Be fair, the number of times that I know we've talked about our defense of the 3-point shot. In that game, I genuinely felt that there were quite a few of those threes that were well contested, but they were just red hot. Their shooting that night was something to behold. I know they didn't get the record, but there was points where you genuinely looked and thought, I really hope we are not going to be the team that's on the back end of a team putting 33 pointers through, because they were shooting that ball straight.
They were. Yeah, I mean, the only disappointing for me was potentially just the second chance points they got. A couple of times, Grayson Allen had a 3, he'd miss it, and he'd go straight back to him, and then he'd just knock it in on the second chance. So that was disappointing. But all in all, you play like that on the road in most cities, and you're going to have a chance. Like you said, Paul, Cole 28, Markel 21, Wendell 19, Franz 18. You're close to 100 there just by 4 players. So it is what it is. It is what it is. And
on that night, Paolo only had 9 points.
Yeah. So Paolo
now,
had 9 points. Yeah, go on then. You go.
go
I
on,
got the point on
go
this.
on, mate. Because now we've got to have a reference with Geraint. Because let's be fair, you must have been screaming at that television the difference in how offensive fouls were being called for Giannis to what Paolo was getting.
Yeah, I mean, we were watching it in the first half, and I think Paolo had 9 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and I'm thinking, he might be on for a triple double here. But then, literally a couple of possessions later, was the first quote offensive foul, and then next possession after, I think it must have been probably within a couple.
I think it was. Yeah.
Again, the exact same call. Joe Ingles just stood there. So hang on. So there was contact there, but they called the offensive foul on the second person behind him. So you're thinking, hang on, what's going on here? And that almost seemed to knock Paolo's confidence a little bit because we didn't sort of play through him afterwards. But then Giannis, on the other end, he gets the ball. Somebody blows, breathes on him. And all of a sudden, it's send into the line. And there was one then, beginning of the second half. So I'm going to make my notes here. I'm watching it. I think Markel Fultz was trying to stop a fast break, and he was possibly within just by the 3-point line. Foul happened. He continued, took a few steps, then gathered, then shot the ball. And then there was a bit of an argument going on about, was he in the act of shooting? Well, he blatantly wasn't, but he just walks the line anyway. And he got the call because of who he is. But going back to that offensive foul on Paolo, it was good to see the challenge from Coach Mosley and him get animated. But if I were him, I would have just taken the tee and just go right into the referees' faces, because you want to see that a bit more, because then they might change their tone about actually calling it the right way when Paolo's actually attacking.
I think the point that you make about it perhaps affecting his confidence is a really good one, because we've spoken about how often Paolo is getting to the line for free throws. That night he shot 2 free throws, made 1 of 2. That's probably one of the lowest stats he's had in that category for the season.
Yeah.
So I mean, on the night we got a number of free throws. Wendell shot 8, Franz shot 8, and Cole, he shot 7. So we were getting free throw calls. I'm not criticising those calls. I just think that that's a very good point that you make about perhaps it affected how Paolo went about the rest of the game.
I mean, the call that summed the night up, and I think it was in the first quarter when Giannis got an and one, and he pushed off, and he had a full extension of his arm.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if you can't see that with the length of Giannis's arms, then we're in for a tough night. I mean, I never felt like the calls affected the way we played.
Right?
Do you know what I mean? I don't think that really played into our mindset. Obviously, there was a bit of frustration with the way a few calls went, but I never felt like we dropped our heads. I always felt like we were still in the game. We had a good attitude. We had a good approach to the game. They knew they were up against it. They just kept working. And at the end of the day, you just ran into one of the best teams in the NBA. And I hope they win it all for me.
Mm. I just wonder if you point about it perhaps affecting Paolo's confidence, because I've only just seen that free throw stat as we sat here talking. And I've got the box score up in front of me. And you see that Paolo only shoots 2 free throws in that game, which I think perhaps he got fouled calls earlier on that then resulted in them being in the penalty, but weren't shooting fouls. I'm not, but I wasn't aware of that during the game, but I do think it's perhaps a decent point G's made there.
I think we need.
Go on, Gary.
No, you go first, man. It's just a little funny point on the end.
No, we've done enough talking. You carry on.
We need to speak to Dante's people. We need to get like a segment where it's like a now ref rant with Geraint, or like cursive, or we need to just call it Geraint. That's the other thing. We need this to be a regular segment. I love listening to it, G. So if we're getting bad calls in games, I'm kind of like
making a note of them to bring it in as a subject.
I really, really, really want to see something come up where it's like, yeah, here's G. G's going to kick off. Which ones are going to be? I look forward to it. I look forward to it all week.
G knows this. But if Mikey and I have watched a game ahead of G, I can guarantee you, if there's something happened, we will be messaging one another saying, "How long are you having in a game before we're getting a message from G moaning about this call or that call?" You could have a sweepstakes. In fact, we could add it to instead of magic moments, we could have the competition is how many minutes into a game before G has a moan about the officials.
Yeah. Or you could have, are the officials going to call the game properly? Yes or no? And then everyone will score a point for saying no.
I love the converse argument there, G. Good man.
Yeah.
We've already touched on it as we've been going through. So, Gary, there's been some strong guard play this week. What's been your take on Markel and Cole's play?
Right. So I'll start with Cole, and you know where I stand with Cole on things. But that Milwaukee game was just classic Cole Anthony from last season, where it was electrifying. From what I've seen so far, I'm in the fourth quarter now. But that stat line, if you just look at that, 28 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. It's what he was doing. Thank you, G. I like that you've got your badge on there. Very well done.
I'm going to say, I'm laughing because G showed me this badge after we'd recorded last week.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "I've got to wear it this week. I've got to put it on. And I'd completely forgotten about it as I wrote in the section about talking about guard play. And up it pops. Good man, G.
You need to get it on a headband. Just put it on your brow and stuff for a class. No,
in case anyone's not watching it on YouTube, it's basically a badge that says "My favourite player." And then it's got the face of Markel Fultz. And they were giving them out at the Magic game against I can't remember. Must have been the Pelicans when I was over there in January. Anyway, sorry, Gary.
It's all right. My favourite player is Cole Anthony. In case anyone didn't know, but the 28 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. That performance there was basically what Cole was doing pre-injury last year. That was a typical Cole Anthony performance in that 20-game span. So I think really what we're getting those flashes still there. And I do think Cole's a bit slept on, and I know I'm biased, but I do. And then you look at the last 10, you've got a 22-year-old here who's putting up 12 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists on 46% field goals. You know, if you were judging him as the sixth man, and I still think that argument's open for me, but it's basically, you look at that and you go, well, that's actually someone who you would say has got that chance to step into elite territory in that category as well, if that's where he ends up. And yeah, there's been some off nights and there's been some on nights, as we saw against Milwaukee. But I think a lot of, and we know I like T. Ross as well, but there's a lot of it where you compare a sixth man in Orlando in recent memory to Terrence Ross because he was so good for that period under Steve Clifford. But we forget that T. Ross had a lot of off nights as well, a lot of nights where it wasn't falling for him. And I think, you know, people might look at Cole and go, oh, he needs to do this. And we need to bear in mind what he is doing is pretty good for a 22-year-old. He's doing well. And I still don't think that's necessarily a settled argument. But you saw what Cole can do against Milwaukee, and, you know, long may it continue. With Mark, if you look at it and you compare it with Markel's the only guard on the Magic roster in years where, if you look at Cole's best stretch in that like 20-game, 25-game sample, Markel Fultz is really the only guard who's comparable in that stretch, and that is in Markel's current stretch. So I think really we've got it shows you the strength of what we've got now when I would say our 2 best guard performers for years are actually both on the current roster based on potential and windows that we've had glimpses at them in, and they're still both young. Markel speaks for himself. When he plays, we win more, and he's playing really, really well now. So if you look at his stretch, really, you've got a guy, he's putting 96% in nearly at the free throw line. Like when we got him from Philadelphia, bear in mind when he came to us, we saw it on Twitter where there was like video clips of Markel. He can't even shoot a free throw, and you were showing his arm and shoulder. And the argument was, this guy's finished. He can't do anything. And he's now at 96% for free throws. In his last 10, he's 52% from the field for a guard. That's impressive. He's putting up 16.5 a game, 5.3 assists, 5.2 rebounds. If he can get, if we use that argument when people look at shooting style, a 96% free throw shooter, somewhere 37% on decent threes in a game, you look at that there and then you start to say, well, that's when you start thinking about that De'Aaron Fox style argument coming in, where the leap he's made this season and how he's now being talked about. So Markel Fultz really is instrumental to what we're doing in Orlando. If he could just get that three ball to fall, I think there's another leap there for him as well. And I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet. It is quite amusing if we think as well that when Markel came over, there was a lot of noise. And I don't mind Philadelphia. Actually, I've got a friend who's a Philadelphia fan. But there was a lot of Philadelphia noise about, but we kept Ben Simmons. And look at how great Ben Simmons is. I think that argument now is starting to come home to roost about who the better top pick there was for Philly. I just think if we think about with what we've got in the guard spots now, and we think about our big three, which is Markel, Cole, and Jalen, we really just need to see something in the backcourt where there's a consistent 3-point threat there who can go off. We really need that. And going back to what we said earlier on Paolo Banchero, I think what we're seeing is that teams, as we know, we've talked about it, are putting their best defenders and they're preparing for Paolo. That is what they're doing. How do we stop Paolo Banchero? And they're starting to cram the paint out to try and stop him getting in there and getting to the line as much as he does. So if we can get somebody, whether it's Markel's free throw shooting translates to threes, whether Cole gets that consistency and run without injuries, or whether Jalen totally nails it, or we find somebody in the draft or whatever, we need that 3-point shooter, that JJ Redick style player. Grady Dick's being talked about a lot in the draft. Yes. I would totally buy that jersey just for what's on the back, because I would think it's so descriptive. I'd be like, that's totally me. That jersey's so me.
If Dick, you want grade A Dick, not grade E.
I would look at the jersey, I'd be like, wow, finally they've made a jersey which was made for me. But I think when you look at it, really, we need that threat out there. And I will add, I don't think that is Fred VanVleet, even though 3 years ago that would be where you would go, oh, he would fit great. I don't think that he is him. But I think we've got room for optimism. We've got room for growth. Let's play the season out. Let's see if we can get in the play-in and give these guys meaningful minutes. And I'll go back to what I said at the start of the season: meritocracy, win it out, prove it.
I know we need to improve our 3-point shooting, but don't you think we've already got that on the roster with Gary Harris? You're talking about that extra role.
Well, Caleb Houston as well.
Well, Caleb Houston, I know there's a lot of talk, and we all know that is a huge area that this team needs to improve in next year. Because I think we all sit here and think next year we should be in the playoffs. Yeah. I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation to put on this team next year. And I know there's areas in the team where you've got to keep this team improving. But to me, that still comes from the internal development. Like, we've obviously talked about Paolo's struggles. Franz is up to I don't know what Franz is averaging right now, but he's 18. Been averaging about 40% over the last good stretch of games. If Markel can continue to make that jump, if Cole can continue to make that jump, Jalen as well. Gary's our best 3-point shooter. I don't know why. I know we keep thinking of players we can plug in at that 2 spot, but for me, he's already that guy. Wendell's taken a bit of a jump from the 3-point line this year. I think it's more of the bench depth that we need to improve on from that 3-point percentage, because
it's volume as well for Gary. Gary needs to take more.
I completely agree, G. That's a good shout.
I know I've been critical at times of the 3-point shooting that we do. What I didn't realise until we started doing the game previews again is how few 3-pointers we take in the league compared to most other teams. We are I think we're 27th in the league.
Yeah, we are.
For the number of free throws attempted. For the number of 3-point shots attempted. It feels like we're much higher than that at times. But yeah, our volume is way down on what a lot of other teams actually shoot. And I was surprised to see that.
If we look 2 years down the line, at Paolo Banchero 2 years down the line, and we look at it and we see, let's say he's a 30% 3-point shooter. He's kind of like a Giannis, where if you leave him open, you've got to consider it. But his game's going to be about handling the ball, driving in, getting these points around the basket and in the paint. If we say that's where Banchero goes to, I think what we need is to look at what Milwaukee have done, and they've got that where whether people respect our 3-point shooters or not, we've got to have people who make them think. Our 3-point shooters have to be respected. And if there was a thing, just totally hypothetically, where JJ Redick was on, say, standing out there, and Hero Turkoglu or Rashard Lewis was standing out there, and you've got the ball in Paolo's hands and he's driving into paint, and you decide we're going to fill the paint up, you're going to die by the 3. And we need, I just think that there where we either shoot more threes from the outside with Gary Harris and we give Caleb Houston a chance and we see what we've got and we work with our guards. But we just, I think, need to have that where we become scarier from the 3-point. Because I just think right now we aren't respected from 3. That's my take. When I see I think that's one of the big things that's changed for Paolo. I think teams are like, right, get in the paint. When we played the Bucks in the playoffs, we crowded that paint area to try and nullify Giannis. And I think that's what teams are going to do to us. But we need to have like your Chris Middleton, Grayson Allen type players out there who it's like, yeah, you can do that, but then you're going to get destroyed from the outside as well. And I just think having that option, like a Grady Dick, if he's as good as we think, but that JJ Redick type player out there who's going to do that, all of a sudden changes us. And it might be Gary Harris, it might be Cole, whatever, we don't know. But I just think we need that respected, fear that person on the perimeter. And I think you'll get that a little bit more out of Paolo. That's 2 years down the line for me.
How do you think we improve that 3-point percentage next year?
I think, Mikey, that we won't, not being pessimistic, but I said it at the start of the season, I think we'll just miss out on the play-in.
Yeah.
And I think we will use one of our draft picks, because we've got the Bulls one as well. I think we'll target a 3-point shooter in the draft. That's if it's available, I think that's what we'll go for. Because I don't think we'd be really, really lucky if we end up with a top 2 pick at this draft. Like, that would be insane. But I think we might address it via the draft. I don't buy this Fred VanVleet talk, because since when has anyone known what our front office were going to do? We were taking Jabari Smith. That was nailed on by people who knew what was going on in the front office. Well, obviously, hey. So yeah, I think we'll do it in the draft. I think we'll draft a 3-point shooter.
I think it's a case of we've got to go into the summer looking to raise our floor.
Mm-hmm.
We're still looking at Paolo, Franz, Markel. Those core, the core of our best players need to get better. Like, we aren't going to get better without them getting better in the summer and going into next year. But we almost need to start putting pressure on those other players like Jalen, like Wendell, that they need to raise their game again. Otherwise, they're going to get pushed out, because there's going to come a time where you've got to start recycling through players until you find that balance of players that you want. Again, that was kind of my point with Gary Harris. Was, to me, I look at him and think, we've got that. I'm not comparing him to JJ Redick, but he's shooting the 3 really, really, really well this year. Probably better than JJ Redick did in any of his best years in Orlando. He's probably he's a better defender than JJ Redick is. I mean, he's a good 2-way guard. Mm-hmm. But how do you improve that guard position with the 3? Do you force Jalen Suggs out. That's my point. You have to almost raise the floor by bringing in better players to then put the pressure on and make players fight for their playing time next year. I mean, that's the only way it's gonna happen. I mean, it's a good conversation to have, isn't it? But
the annoying thing is, Mikey, if you looked at it on paper, like if you just said statistically, like on paper, what players do, what they should do, and where they should go, Mo Bamba would have been the perfect centre for Orlando. And that's what's really annoying. Mo Bamba would have been the perfect centre for Orlando on paper, because he solved a lot of those problems. Not that I dislike Wendell, but there we go.
There's been two really good pieces I've read this week. One is by Philip Rossman-Reich in respect of the guard situation. If anybody fancies a read, like me, old school, would rather read than listen to other podcasts and the like, then Fansided that Philip wrote is really good, talking about the guard situation. The other one that I've read is Wendell ultimately the answer to the centre position? And that was quite interesting. You can see, I personally like Wendell a lot. I'm hoping that with another season we do see some more improvement on his 3-point shooting, at which point I think he becomes a far more complete player. But the argument is there as to if you had the opportunity. I know you're a fan of Valanciunas, Mikey, but if you've got an opportunity to pick up somebody who is a veteran in that position and offers just that solid core of rebounding that then recycles the ball for you far more or gets you a better chance at second point, that's a better option. It's been some quite interesting stuff, but I'm happy to. I like to see Wendell get a little bit longer yet, personally.
Yeah, you guys know I love Wendell, but I feel one of the only weaknesses with Wendell on the floor is we lack size to rebound the ball properly. I think there's games and stretches where you get stops, but you're giving teams too many second chance opportunities, and how many of those lead to threes? And I just feel sometimes you need a big 7-footer out there, like a Steven Adams. Like, I love Steven Adams.
That's beast.
Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah.
I take Nurkic over both of those myself.
Would you?
Yeah, I like Nurkic.
But
he kills us every time we play
does.
them. You watch now on Sunday, isn't it? Portland.
There's like I said, there's two weaknesses with Wendell. It's his size. His shot. There's not a lot of shot blocking out on the floor when he's on the floor, and his durability. He's got to stay healthy for. I mean, you can't go into a season hoping he plays 60, 70 games. That needs to improve as well.
This is a reaction video that we're doing, having just finished recording this week's Penny for Your Thoughts episode. In that episode, we are talking about Jonathan Isaac and whether his injury was something to be concerned about. I do believe a few moments ago I actually said I wouldn't be surprised to see him play against Portland. Well, clearly, I know next to naff all. The news has just broken that Jonathan Isaac has undergone season-ending surgery to repair a torn left abductor muscle. Woj describes it as a brutal setback for Isaac, who's 25, having played only 11 games this season after missing 2 years with a torn ACL. The MRI that was done revealed the abductor injury on Wednesday. So, first of all, lads, reactions. G?
I'm speechless. Absolutely speechless.
Gary? Your body language says it all, man.
To quote Bill Murray, well, it's Groundhog Day again. Here we go.
Mikey, let's come to as our resident expert on these sorts of things.
Dr. Mikey.
Dr. Mikey O'Neill.
Yeah,
Hey?
yeah. Tell us, mate. You've more experience of these sorts of things, no doubt, with the training side of things that you do. You must have helped one or two people come back from injuries. What's your thoughts on an abductor tear?
Well, it's not good. That's a start. I mean, we were talking. It's funny. We were talking.
I can't believe.
We were talking. That's not what you wanted to hear, was it? But,
I genuinely can't believe. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play against Portland.
I would now, Paul.
yeah.
Well, I was an idiot.
Yeah. I mean, the surgery.
Wow.
What I will say, trying to put a positive spin on this, was I don't remember if this was it earlier in the season or in pre-season, and Gary Harris had surgery on an injury.
That was a meniscus tear, though, wasn't it?
My point is, sometimes with these surgeries, they can actually help speed up the recovery process, depending on how. The thing is, we don't know how severe the tear is, and that's obviously going to determine how long he's going to be out for. I mean, we already know he's out for the rest of the season, but we actually recorded a segment earlier in the podcast where we said that we don't want this to eat up into JI's summer, where he can carry on working on his strength and work on his conditioning and work on his game, so he's got a full summer to prepare for next year. Well, that's already gone out the window at this point.
I'm just reading something here. How long does a torn abductor muscle take to heal? And the answer that's on this clinical website is, if the tear is high on the abductor tendon, recovery can be significantly slower and take approximately 12 to 16 weeks. A tear.
I'm glad you said weeks.
Yeah, mate. Well, it could be years with Jonathan. Who knows? A tear to the mid-belly of the muscle will typically take between 4 and 12 weeks to heal, depending upon the severity of the tear, just as you said, Mikey. In rare circumstances, you may require crutches to assist walking.
And if you want to know why, there's less blood flow near tendons. Tendons and ligaments don't have much blood flow, whereas there's a higher blood flow in the middle of the muscle. So that's why the recovery's quicker for those types of injuries. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we may as well go for the longer time frame and add more time onto it with JI. I mean, that's just being realistic at this point. I mean, we're giving you the clean reaction. All of us were coming out with some explicitives beforehand.
I wasn't, Mikey. I wasn't.
Yes, you were. You went. No, I'm not going to say it.
I think I was worse.
I mean, the worst thing is, I just feel so sorry for JI. I really do. I mean,
It's
11 games he's come back, and he's gradually. I mean, we saw what impact he made in the short amount of time he was on the floor. He was ramping up his minutes slowly.
Temporary setback. He'll be back beginning of next season, fighting fit, and that's when we're going to mount a challenge. So let's just ride this wave and get him back on the court next season.
So anyway, guys, watch the podcast for more of our accurate and hot takes, because it's a good one. We had fun recording it, but we just wanted to give you a live reaction now to the news that JI is out, season-ending surgery. So we are recording our next episode on Friday, March the 10th, provided we don't change our mind halfway through like we did this week. We were supposed to record yesterday. In between that time, the Magic play tonight against Charlotte. We then head home for the beginning of a 4-game home stretch. We have, first of all, Portland, which has a UK tip time of 11 p.m, so a little bit earlier for those of you who stay up to watch the games. Not such a hard work. We then see Milwaukee roll into town. and Utah. Now, lads, I just want to know, first of all, are we going to break this hoodoo that Milwaukee have had over us recently? And what's your predictions for the week? So let's go with Gary. You've been quiet for a while. Go for it, man.
Yeah. I've gone 2-2. I don't think we'll beat Milwaukee though. Within that, I just don't think we will. I think, as we've already seen, when they've got players somewhere reasonably healthy, I think they're a really tough matchup for us. I think we can cause Boston. We can cause Boston problems. We've seen that. I think Milwaukee and Boston are the best two teams in the Eastern Conference by some considerable. I think Philadelphia are finding their way up there as well. And there's an elite, but us against Milwaukee right now is not a matchup that favours us. So no, 2-2.
G, what are you going, man?
It's either 3-1 or 2-2. I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say 3-1. I'm also going to agree with Gary. And as I said earlier, I can't see anybody touching Milwaukee. 16-game winning streak at the moment. Unless they start resting players. And I was having a bit of a conversation with UK Bucks, and I said, do us a favour on Tuesday and give Giannis the night off. But obviously they've got a lot of others. And we played well on earlier this week, so I can't see us beating them. We have to beat Charlotte, let's be honest. They're obviously missing LaMelo Ball now. Portland, beatable, but obviously, hopefully, Lillard has cooled down a little bit.
Yeah, that's 71, was it, the other night?
Yeah, man, that was mightily impressive. And then obviously Utah. I mean, we should have beaten them earlier in the season. So, stick my neck out. We'll go 3-1 with a loss to the Bucks.
Mikey,
I'm not feeling it, if I'm honest. I'm going to go 1-3.
Who are we beating?
Charlotte.
Okay.
0-3 at home.
Yeah.
I do feel that we could go 2-2, but I'm not quite as confident about the Charlotte game as everybody else seems to be. In the last 10, they've won 6 out of those 10 games. Most of those.
What are they doing? They're ruining their tank odds. What are they doing?
Most of those have come on our court as well. They've won 4 times in Orlando out of those 6. So
we're playing in Charlotte though, so it's all right.
I know. So yeah,
and LaMelo Ball's out with a broken ankle. So
that's where I'm kind of thinking that I'm not quite as confident, but I am going for a win in Charlotte, and I also think that we're going to turn Utah over. So I'm going 2-2. I'm going 2-2.
But not Portland.
I'd like to think it. I mean, that's one of them games that I would love to be over there for, because I really would like to see Dame Lillard play, and that would be for me like the Golden State game. I'd want it to finish on a 1-point win for the Magic, and see Lillard go off on one in the same way as when we were over there for Golden State. We saw Steph Curry and Klay Thompson had brilliant games, but we won by a point and got to wave their fans away. That'd be the ideal. Yeah. I like them games. So, right. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much, as always, for listening and watching. Please hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, Orlando Magic UK. Also, notifications so you never miss another episode. Why would you want to miss another episode of us? If you fancy getting any shopping done, hit our affiliate links, NBA Store Europe and Fanatics. Don't forget to use the online discount code MAGICUK10 for 10% off your entire order, though certain exclusions may apply. As always, follow us Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all at Orlando Magic UK. And until next time, from Gary, Geraint, Mikey and myself, go Magic.